So, here we are again, thankfully not to rant on an anime game for the 4th time in a row, but don't think that will make today's subject less abominable, because that speech on the screen doesn't deceive you. It is hard to put into words how otherworldly levels of bad this shit is, but enough stalling, let's talk about Vivzy Pop's aborted fetus, aka Ongezellig. You may not be familiar with this shit because thankfully it isn't as famous as I thought it was, which is why I was afraid that making a video about it could have a Cobra effect and further popularize it, because we all know Embryo da Zera is such a huge name, but let's be real, most of the people who will watch this are its disgusting fans, so it surely won't be a big deal, at least I hope so. Well, time to ruin the lies of those lucky enough to not know what it is. Ongezellig was a Dutch animated web series made by a brony faggot going by the name of Studio Massa. I say was because thanks my lack of God it ended in 2022 and was officially discontinued earlier this year. This series consists of 6 parts and tells the story of 3 adoptive sisters named Maya, Coco and Mimi, as they have to make and present a history project in school. Sounds lame enough as it is, but it's actually way worse than you could possibly imagine. First let's talk about the animation and art style. In short, it's garbage. It's literally infuriating to look at those fucking characters, especially their goddamn eyes. I actually mistook the shit for that YouTube channel called I Can't Sleep that I don't even know anything about. Also it kinda resembles fucking Equestria Girls, which makes sense as the creator is a brony, and it explains the kind of fan base this show has, but we'll get there. For now let's talk about the worst part, the characters. First there is Maya, the brown emo bitch. Her character is that she's unsociable and depressed, but there is no way you could possibly feel any sympathy for her. Why is that, you might ask? Well, she's a fucking porn addict. The literal first thing we see in the first episode is her watching tentacle hentai in the darkness of her room, and again in the last episode. Also her sisters ask why her bed creaks at night, which apparently is a reference to masturbation. If that wasn't enough she lets it slide that she wants to fuck her sister, and even tries to justify it by claiming that it's not incest because she's adopted. But even if it wasn't incest it still wouldn't be fine because they're both the same gender. For fuck's sake, why are we talking about incest again? What decisions did I make in my life that led me here? Back to subject though, I hate this bitch and I'm glad her life is miserable and depressing. I was hoping she would just end her fucking life on the last episode, but unfortunately she was just daydreaming. How pitiful. But somehow this degenerate isn't even the worst character. That title goes to Coco, and it's not because her name copied Coco Bandicoot, but simply because she's from South Africa, and we all know Afrikaners are less than subhuman, but it does make me happy that she has no parents. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but the only funny part in the whole series was when she snapped and almost cried because Maya made fun of her dead parents. And that's the part that was supposed to be serious and emotional, but do you really expect me to feel bad for a bore? Get fucked. Finally there's Mimi, who's supposed to be a comic relief character, and of course she's unsufferable and her only joke is being a Nazi. Funnily enough she is actually a dirty little Jap but claims to be a Dutch nationalist. Frankly this is very accurate because the people who oppose immigration of non-whites to the first world are always non-white immigrants themselves. It really says a lot how awful these characters are when the Nazi chink is somehow the least bad of the 3. Now let's talk about the other thing the show is known for, which is its humor, which as you may have guessed, is absolute shit just like everything else. Mostly it's just the most predictable and safe quote-unquote dark humor you could think of, like when Coco asks Maya what's her favorite painter and she answers Hitler. Wow, I totally didn't see that one coming 1,000 miles away. Or when Mimi says in her school project that there's no way 6 million waffles were cooked. Of course Massa went for that one because if he had her question the 10 million Ukrainians who totally starved in just 1 year his house would have been blown with tanks and grenades under Zelensky's orders and he would have been killed having his parts cut off and the house would become no longer owned. There's also anime-related shit because of course there is, including the degenerate crap that Maya was watching and when her brain-dead ape sister shows it in school after seeing it on her computer's history search and thinking it's actual history. That must be the most intelligent bore alive really. And finally, the voice acting is god-awful, although that might have to do with the fact that Dutch is an annoying and cringy language. The English dub also sounds annoying but it was done using AI so I can really expect something great. But the worst part about all of this isn't even the show itself. Yes, I know I just spent nearly 5 minutes explaining why it's so shitty, and all I said is true, but what really makes me hate this to the extent that I do is the fanbase, because they're like 99% channers, more specifically from Sojack.party, also known as the worst site on the entire fucking internet. These vermin are the reason the show even became popular outside the Netherlands, and you just can't look up anything related to it without finding them playing and communicating through their anuses in the comments section. In one hand, I'm glad the show isn't super famous like Has Been Hometel or Helluva Boss, but in the other hand it makes its fanbase almost exclusively made up of channers and thus makes it way more hateable. It also makes its fans think they're cool and underground for liking something quote-unquote obscure and supposedly underrated. Truth is, the show is underhated, not underrated, but hey, at least it was discontinued and will remain forever a pilot of something that never was, unless we are unlucky enough for Massa to change his mind and come back with it and perhaps even turn it into a real show, in which case I would have him dragged with all the force in the world to a dark BDSM room to have his arms chopped off and get cannibalized by the guard. Have a good night.